What's going on, everyone? My name is Joseph Reynolds, and today joining me is a play-by-play commentator for Octagon, Mr. Big So himself, Luke Barnatt, as we prepare to go through the Octagon 43 card. Obviously, the main event, one of the biggest fights that you could pit in Octagon history, a co-main that could be a main event in itself, and 3 game changers bouts as well. How are you feeling for that card coming up?
You know, I've been with Octagon now for I'd say nearly 2 years, year and a half, something like that. But I've commentated on a lot of cards, and there's been a lot of special moments. The beginning of the Game Changer tournament, the first event that we had back in Ostrava, was an incredible night and some incredible fights. But this, I think, is the biggest card that they've ever put together. Like the way they put it together, the build up for it, especially with obviously the main event, Carlos taking on Kinsel. It's just been building and building and building, and then the levels with the Game Changer on it as well, and it being in Prague, being sold out, being 20,000 people or 21,000, whatever it is total, it's definitely going to be a special night.
Yeah, and when you take a look at the opening bout on the card, I believe it's 1-0 versus 2-0. To instantly make this massive jump in the careers, to be opening a show like this with everything that's on the line, for these fighters, what do you think sort of going through their minds as they really get the opportunity to show what they're about in front of such a big crowd to open up such a big card? Well,
I think what Octagon do very, very well is they really show the development of the sport. So I'm not sure how well versed you are with Octagon and the guys that are watching, but Octagon started as a TV show, Octagon Challenge, which is, it's a very raw sport in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia, and it became Slovakia versus the Czech Republic, and that's what built the foundation, for the sport in this region. And they have done so well at showing the raw talent of the guys developing into mixed martial artists like Patrick Kinsel and the top level guys. So they never want to lose that on a card. They always want to show the next generation of people or the next level of people, and they want to allow guys to express themselves at the beginning, like 1-0, 2-0, like you say, because they are invested in the people's stories, not just in the fight, not just in the competition, but the people that they put together on the cards. They always have something about them, and they tell their stories very, very well. So to open this card, I'm not like we have at most events now are opened by early level guys, like 1-0, 2-0, maybe a 3-0 guy, because they're searching for the new talent in the region. And for those guys, we've seen it. Some people rise to the occasion. Some people love the crowd. Some people hate it and they freeze up and they're slow and they're worried and they get on top of them and then they go away. And you can really see the development. And we saw that just to, specifically with one fighter that they have there, which is probably their standout star, in my opinion, right now, in the Black Panther. Lozen Kieta, he started with Octagon. I think he was 5-0 maybe or something like that. No one had ever heard of him. And he just blasted onto the scene and ran through everybody. And now he's a double champion there. He's got wins over, some of the biggest names in the sport. But we've seen him develop. We've seen his story, and they've told it very, very well, from a street kid in Belgium to now becoming a double champion with Octagon. So I'm not surprised. Long answer, but I'm not surprised that we start the card off with an early fight.
Yeah, and then moving on, obviously, and then Vili was originally supposed to face Jacob Takota, who went and ended up facing Lucien Keita, who then was able to go and win the interim title there as a result of Maitsanitsi pulling out. But in terms of sort of having this fight for him, there's a lot of people that have been talking about him coming into it, to have a change of opponent not too far away at a catchweight fight as well. Does that sort of make a difference to a fighter almost, having that different sort of opponent, or do you feel as though his preparation may have sort of stayed similar to the same, not too far away from the fight when the opponent was changed?
Well, I think people always focus on the guy stepping up. Oh, this guy's stepping up on late notice. He's coming in. He's taking on a challenge. Good on him. But it's very hard for the guy that's been preparing for a different opponent the entire time. The way that camps are structured, they're structured to create patterns and identify problems with specific opponents. So when they switch out and a new guy comes in, it's always a big challenge. So it depends how they react. It depends what type of camp they've had. Some of the guys that are very specific and they watch the fighter that they're going to fight and they work patterns and they work things like that, they can struggle with last minute changes.
Yeah, and then as well, sort of moving on into Jose Daniel Toledo Canellis, and then the Mark Deuces fight as well. Obviously, Jose's fought in the promotion before, and then I believe that Mark has as well around Europe and KSW. But in terms of having this fight really early on in the card, and it's such a big fight as well. I feel as though this is sort of one of those statement fights that just goes to show the sort of depth that Octagon has now in terms of talent that they can put in within the European scene. But taking a look at this fight, what are your sort of thoughts around it?
You know, this one, my heart's very close to this one because I obviously trained with Toledo. He actually trains out my gym in Spain. I'm kind of the reason he ended up joining Octagon. He's had a few fights with there. And Toledo's had, although his record is mixed, he's fought all over the world, gone to Chechnya and knocked out a Chechen, come over to, to the Czech Republic, fought in the backyard, fought some of their toughest guys like Xavier, and really always puts on exciting fights. Like, he's never in a boring fight. Goes to war is his problem that I've tried to train out of him, but I can't. He goes to war every single time. Every time he gets hit, he swings. Fought Thiago Silva in Bratislava, I believe, at ACA back in the day as well. So he's been in there with some of the best fighters in the world. He has the experience. He's grown in depths, and he's been away for a little while because he had a son and his life changed. So this is kind of like his statement to come back. And like you said, to have this fight against such a tough German opponent on, I think it's the third fight of the night or the fourth fight of the night, it shows how stacked this card is, because the level of these two light heavyweights is going to be a very, very exciting fight. And I think, like you said, it shows the depth of the Octagon is starting to get now. You could have questioned that. When I started with Octagon 2 years ago, you could have questioned that. You could have said, they've got a couple of good fighters, but most, it's a bit shallow and some of it. Now they're stacked out, and they're stacking out with European talent across different nations and different places. So Germany obviously been a big one because they've been to Germany a few times. With them coming to the UK, they also have quite a few Spanish guys as well. They've got a Greek guy. They're really trying to formulate all the different hotspots in Europe and get them in the promotion. So it's no longer just a Czech and Slovak promotion. It really is a worldwide European scene.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, sort of having that representation of your gym on the card, and for me, sort of seeing the fighters from your gym when they do fight, the running theme is they're always there. They turn up every time. One for me in the UK scene is Gabby Gomez, who we've seen come over on short notice before. But to have those guys that are able to do that and have such a gym with that caliber, to see them start to represent these top shows as well, what does that sort of mean to you, to sort of see what you have planned out for your gym and to see it turn into success as well?
I mean, I've had the gym now for 8 years, I believe, maybe even a little bit longer. The success of the gym, to be honest, is more down to my partner, Santeri Lilias. He's there day in, day out, running people through it. He's one of the best black belts in Europe, and he handles the grappling side. Gabby is a great example of the gameness and the tough fights that he takes on. But the MMA side is now down to a guy called Jay Cuccinello, who fought in the Ultimate Fighter finale a few years back. He came through. I've trained with him since I was in Tsunami Gym. To see my gym develop the way it has, and for it to get characters coming through like Gabby, we have another kid called Vincenzo, another one called Emeterio, like simmering that are coming through. After fighting, when you stop fighting, it's the only way to really get that buzz again, is to teach. Like, Gabby's a great example. Not just myself, but everything Gabby knows, everything he has learned at my gym. There's nothing else that he has learned. So he's been programmed, if you want to call it like that, by me and my guys and the gym environment. So to go and see him when he gets a win, it's like I get a win. So that feeling is good. Same with Jacare, but Toledo. But Toledo was fighting before I showed up in Spain, and I helped him out and I trained him. So he's a little bit he's his own individual guy. And I've been insanely busy for the last 2 years and not so much in the gym. So all of the hard work goes down to the guys there day in, day out, like Santeri, Jay Cuccinello, Gabby, those guys. They're the guys that are really honing the talent there now.
And then just to move on to the next fight, obviously it's the first game changers bout of the evening, this one being a backup fight. Ion Serdu and then Amarant Gogoladze. I know he was meant to face Louis Glissman originally. He was one of the favourites for the tournament. Unfortunately, had a poor weight cut. But in terms of sort of coming into this fight now for himself, do you feel as though it's going to sort of be a redemption a little bit for him and to really show that what he is capable of? What do you feel he'll be going through sort of in his mind on this fight?
Yeah, Gogoladze has a lot to prove to a lot of people, in my opinion. What happened at the original bout where he had the bad weight cut and he had to check and he missed it, it's like that, for me, is unprofessional. And for me, it ruins what is such a fantastic opportunity for him in the biggest competition in European MMA history. So for him to go away now, he's coming back. I think he has to for sure have a good weight cut and make the weight and do that very, very professionally as well. He's an extremely talented guy in a very, very dangerous fight, but he's taken on a dynamite guy in Serdu. He's absolutely, he's probably the most dangerous guy that you could fight, I think. Young, hungry, very, very explosive, had a great opening fight. Obviously, he lost, but you could see the danger that he possesses. So for Gogoladzes, I think he's got a bit more experience. He's a bit more technical, but I think for a second shot at coming back to the tournament, he probably got the hardest guy that you could think out of the mix to get him involved with. Bit of an outsider, like people don't know Serdu, but if you watch his fights, that one's a real. I think it's going to be like, it's not going to be close. I think it's going to go all Gogoladzes or all Serdu. There's going to be like one guy is going to dominate depending on how the fight transpires. But it's an really exciting fight. And for me, Serdu obviously getting called back by the fans. I'm kind of pulling his corner because I feel bad for. I feel like what happened with him in the Bojan fight was unfortunate. The way it all ended, it was spectacular to watch, but it was just unfortunate for him, and he didn't really get to show his talent. So I'm hoping he gets to show it in this fight.
Yeah, and as well, so in this fight, both guys are only 28 and 25, and the people that are in this tournament, some of them have already been Octagon champions. If they weren't champions in Octagon, Melvin van Stoojdam, who's on the card, was the first LFL welterweight champion. To have such a sort of stacked out tournament, and the guy's still really young as well. Again, we spoke about it in terms of this card and the testament to the quality the promotion's got, but do you feel as though it's also a testament to the quality that's in the welterweight division as well, that you can put on these sort of backup fights and they could just fit into the tournament as well and people won't bat an eye to it?
I think the thing that makes this so special is obviously the financial backing of the tournament has managed to draw people from all over Europe at such a high standard. And these guys, young, 25, 28, coming in at such a level that they're at already in European MMA, to now be able to take on, like you said, the likes of David Kozma, who's on the card, who used to be a champion. And then there's so many people that have so much experience, but then you've got like the young, hungry destroyers coming through, and they're getting the opportunity. I mean, if I was coming through in MMA when I started, which was 20 years ago, 18 years ago, and I had the opportunity to go and try and fight for 300 grand, in a tournament style, it's going to bring your level up. Because the thing that's always struggled with at the beginning for the young guys is, you're scraping by, you're struggling. Very, very. I lived in the gym and slept on the floor for 2 years. It's a tough sport to be involved with financially. So some people, is it worth it? This is worth it for everyone involved. So if you're young and you're talented and it just makes you hone in even more. And I think that's why we got such amazing performances at the first Game Changer event when we had all of the fights. For me, it was the best Octagon event we've had so far. It was the most exciting, the best, most zoned in fights that we had. I think we had that because everyone knows this is a life-changing opportunity. So to have that life-changing opportunity at 25, when you're really only just getting started in the sport, it gives you even more. So that's why I think we have such a well-balanced fight matrix with the guys coming in, like you said, the Surdus and the Gogoladzes, who are kind of on the outside now. That could be chucked into the tournament straight away because the level is so high now for these guys, because they're fully 100% committed to the sport. Whereas before, you wouldn't have the opportunity to make 300 grand. So you'd have to work, train, be like in the 50-50, not quite committed fully. But I think Octagon is giving the opportunity, especially in the Czech Republic, to the guys. You've seen the development of the fighters because they see the big stage, they see the money, they see the opportunity that they have to go out, give it everything, and to become legends, like to become celebrities, to become high-end fighters. It's there on a plate for them. So I think that's why we get such a depth in the welterweight division, because people see that. They see the sold-out stadium and they're like, I want to be a part of that. So they get involved.
Yeah, and then as well, not only for the fighters, it seems like sort of a first in Europe, really, to have a tournament of this sort of magnitude with the money that's on the line. Obviously, as you said, 300,000 euros for the winner. But do you feel as though it's almost like Octagon paves the way for other shows to do similar things? And do you feel as though it's going to be a massive benefit overall to sort of European MMA to see the start of these tournaments? And because it's going to show not just what the fighters can get out of it, but also the growth that the fighters have had as a result of having this tournament there at the same time for them.
I mean, I personally feel there is no other promotion out there that could do this. There's no other promotion out there like Octagon. So I think I would love that to be the case. I would love this to inspire other promotions to put on the same level of competition. But other promotions aren't selling out 20,000 seats in the stadium. No other promotion, you know. We're not talking about the UFC. We're talking about promotions coming through in Europe. You look at the other promotions, if you want to, I mean, historically, things like Bama, they never sold out 20,000 tickets. Maybe for the Tom Watson Reed fight, maybe I was there. Yeah, I'm a dinosaur. I've been at every event going. So like when you talk about these things, you talk about Cage Warriors. Cage Warriors have a huge profile, and they are a great organization to be involved with because of their profile. But they're not putting on tournaments like this. Never going to happen. Never, ever going to happen. They're never going to do something like this. This is not going to inspire people like Cage Warriors to change their model, in my opinion. Other shows, to get to this level, there's so many steps that have to be put in place first. And that's what Octagon have done so well. They're the first promotion I have ever seen, ever, including the UFC, that have managed to build a reputation and a financial stability and actually make money the way that they have been doing it. Like I said, selling out arenas, putting on TV shows, they have a pay-per-view online that makes money as well. They are a financially stable event that is allowing them to put up €1 million, because the prize money is €1 million. The winner gets 300K, but they are giving away €1 million. So the other tournaments you can talk about that do that are people like PFL. It's not a self-sustained thing with PFL. PFL are not paying the guys $1 million to win. It is being paid by the outside. It's being paid by sponsors. It's being paid by TV networks. It's been paid, you know, the €1 million is not coming from a TV network. It's not coming from a sponsor. It is coming from the pockets of Octagon, because they have managed to generate that amount of money to be able to put it back into the sport, if that makes sense. So there is no other organization that can keep up, in my opinion, with Octagon. It just is not known yet across Europe. It's known in the Czech Republic. It's now known in Germany. It's known in Slovakia. And it's slowly bleeding out now in the UK and these other places. But once you experience it and you actually come to an Octagon event and you sit there and you look around and you see 20,000 people there on seats, sold out. The last 5 events I've commentated at, they've been sold out. Not all 20,000. Some have been 10, some have been 7, but they're sold out in different countries, different regions, different places. What other promotion have you ever heard of in Europe that can sell out arenas in different places? KSW, maybe at a time when Mehmed Khalidov was at the top and they had stars. That's kind of fading away now. So these guys are the first guys to do it, and they've done it in such an incredible way that allows them now. This is like for me, this is like a celebration of what Octagon have been able to achieve with the Game Changer this year, and be able to put that financial structure behind it and to give the guys the opportunity to compete. I don't think it'll inspire other promotions to do the same, because I just don't think other promotions are capable of doing it.
100%. And then sort of taking a look at the next fight as well. Again, it's a running trend. 2 fighters again that have been well established in Octagon. Obviously, Gianni Melia, he fought Vlasta Shepo in his last fight, and even Marat Mashuk, he came off of a loss against Almatavio, who's gone on to do good things as well. But in terms of looking at this fight, both men are coming off of a loss. How important is it when you do have that loss to get back on sort of the winning streak? And does the mentality almost change for a fighter if they're coming off of a loss as opposed to coming in off of a win?
Bro, but you're talking about these guys, both heavy hitters as well. You forgot to say that these guys are both dangerous guys, you know, and they took on another dangerous guys. We talk about Chepo and these sort of guys. That fight, if you watch it, is crazy. Chepo gets dropped, gets up, comes back, manages to win, but only just. There's so much different angles to it. But of course, two losing fighters sometimes, when you get backed into a corner, especially Octagon aren't as savage as, say, the UFC, and they cut people and get rid of people. But when you're on a losing streak, you need to prove yourself. You need to come back. Depends how you react mentally to that situation. For me as a fighter, I always loved being the underdog. I loved being the guy that had nothing to lose. When you're the guy that's like the favorite, it can become a little bit more difficult. So for these two, they both go in kind of like, oh, I've got something to prove. We're going to find out if they can prove it. That's what it's about. We'll see who's going to crumble under the pressure, or who's going to rise and say, no, I'm here. I don't want to be known as a guy, you know, that lost my last fight. I didn't give my best performance. We'll see what comes with it. But both extremely entertaining fighters, and I know this one's going to be like a barnstormer as well.
Yeah, and then sort of moving on, it seems like the same case, but this time in the lightweight division. Obviously, Mateusz Legojeski and then Mateusz Kuznik as well. Both these guys have got expansive pro careers so far, and there's still a lot of growth for them to have. But this is one of the fights that sort of stands out for me. You've got a massive prospect taking on another well-experienced pro with a great record to have. But how do you sort of see this fight going a little bit with the success that both men have seen so far in the careers and still what's left for them to go on and achieve?
Yeah, I think, like you said, when you have a rising, call him a star, a rising fighter taking on someone like Kuznik or someone that's been there and done that and been around the promotion. Again, I think Octagon tell the stories so well. So they give it's like an opportunity for the guy who's been the more experienced guy to prove he's still worth it, and he's still experienced, and to prove that he can still put on a show and he can entertain the fans and give them what they want. Or you give an opportunity to the guy coming up, the guy rising, to prove himself against the name. You know, that's what makes this story great, this fight great. And I think these two guys, I think it's going to be a very, very close fight. I think this is going to come down to who wants it more, and who decides to put it on the line on the night. I couldn't pick between the two, to be honest. I'm normally pretty good at making predictions as well, and I'm pretty public. This guy's going to win. But for me, this one's a murky one for me.
100%. And then the next fight as well, it's Lee Chadwick's promotional debut. It's the biggest audience that he's ever going to have fought in front of before. He's back to middleweight, in where he's seen some of his best form in his career, taking on another experienced opponent, another Polish fighter. The last fight I was featuring one as well in Robert Birchett. But taking a look at that fight and seeing Lee Chadwick get to make his debut against such a good opponent as well early on, how do you sort of see this fight looking a little bit?
Well, Chadwick's a great example. I know Chadwick very, very well, trained with him, great guy. He's a great example of what I said about earlier about the promotions. He's fought everywhere. You know, he's been around the sport forever. He would have fought on all those promotions that I listed, that I spoke about historically in the UK. He also had a little bout at Bellator, I believe. So it's about like a few fights. He's going to realize, especially doing this event, being in Prague, he's going to see it. He's going to feel it. He's going to be the guy that, like, he's a perfect person to, after the fight, win or lose, doesn't matter. After the fight, give him a call, ring him up and say, how was Octagon? And he will tell you how the experience differs from all of the other shows that he's been a part of, you know, because he has the experience. Now, for me, the problem with Chadwick, as much as I love the guy, is we all know what he's going to do. He's never changed the way he fights, which is up to him. But like you said, back at middleweight, which I think is where he belongs. Very, very dangerous right hand. For me, his best weapon is on the ground, is his leg locks, which he can utilize. I think he underutilizes them a lot. I'm looking forward to this fight. He's got a tough challenge as well. But for me, I like Chadwick. I like him as a fighter. I like him as a guy. He always comes forward and he always tries to win the fight, even if sometimes it's not the most exciting, or he's always trying. He's not like a boring guy to an extent. He just tries to put his A game in place. Sometimes with him, if that doesn't work, he doesn't have a B, C, and D game. That would be my criticism of him. He goes for the overhand takedown sort of style. And if he can't get that to work for him, sometimes you see him fade away. But hopefully, you know, for his case, and obviously because I'm biased, I like him. Yeah, I'm his friend. Hopefully for him it works out this time and we get a good finish, because he's a finisher as well. He likes to put people out and to take limbs. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then the last three fights on the card, obviously, another game changers bout, Louis Glisman versus Melvin van Stoersdam, the rematch. They both fought a couple of years ago. Louis Glisman, when speaking to him, he believes that he's the man to beat in this tournament. And then Melvin van Stoersdam, I know he's extremely eager to get this fight back. He's been wanting it since the start. And they both finally get the chance to collide as well. What do you sort of feel for this fight going into it and what could take place?
Well, before this call, I thought these were the only three fights that we were going to talk about. So these are the ones that I've been waiting for. Yeah, game changer now. So now we've seen these guys through the tournament, and I don't know how much people are aware, but with the game changer, when you win, you get to select your next position when you're going to fight. And Van Soordam got the first pick, and he sat on a certain side. Then Glisman got to pick, and Glisman picked to fight Van Soordam. Yeah, he could have picked to go to a random spot, but he decided to fight this guy. So Glisman, obviously having the victory over him previously, feels superior, feels like it's an easy way for him to win and get through to the next round. I'm not so sure. I think I was underwhelmed by Griezmann in the Game Changer. I know he's a talented grappler. If he can't get the takedown, he's not particularly dangerous, and he hasn't got incredibly high-level wrestling. Apparently, he was a little bit injured in the last fight, which makes sense to me because he didn't look his normal self. So we'll see. But for me, he has a lot to prove. Him saying he's the guy to beat, I think he's the highest ranked guy in the tournament. For me, I don't think so. I think out of the performances that we saw at the first Game Changer event, I was very underwhelmed by him. He took on Kalashnik, and Kalashnik managed to defend a lot of takedowns and hurt him not hurt him, but put him in some tough spots. So Van Soorden has a point to prove, wants to get this fight back, has lost to this guy, has developed massively since the first fight and become an actual mixed martial artist, whereas before I think he was just kind of like a Thai boxer. So it's an interesting one. I would lean that Griezmann's probably going to be the same. He's going to manage to get it to the ground, and it might take him a little bit longer than before. But if he cannot, I think Van Soorden causes him a lot of problems and can get the finish. So this is a great fight. But I think it's in the tournament. It is where it deserves to be. You know, it's like the first kind of, it's the second round. This kind of fights in the second round makes sense to me. This isn't like a final, or a semi-final or anything. This is like the perfect elimination fight to see who should move up. Super, super exciting. It's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, and then moving on to David Cosma versus Alex Lahore. Obviously, David Cosma, former champion and a great champion at that. And then Alex Lahore, he's come through. He's done an absolute work in his last fight, got a great finish. But in terms of sort of taking a look now, this fight, co-main event, could be a main event on any other show. What's your sort of outlook on this fight coming up?
This is a huge fight. It's a huge fight. David Cosma is huge whenever he fights. So to fight, as a co-main event is different to him because he used to be in the main event. I believe he was the main event of the last one as well. So he's used to be in the main event. How do I explain this fight? So Lahore or whatever, Lahore at middleweight, for me, he never should have been a middleweight. Like, I don't understand why he fought a middleweight. He had a couple of fights. For me, he didn't look very good at the weight. I don't understand what made him go for the weight. I never quite understood it. He looked slow. He just didn't suit him. At welterweight, which is where he's historically been, and he's been a multiple-time world champion across different shows. I believe Bama was one of them that I've already mentioned a couple of times. He looks good, and he's dangerous. Stylistically, to fight David Cosma, I don't know. For me, I think he felt bad when the fights were selected, and he was left to fight David Cosma. They were the last two picks, and they had to fight each other. So I think for him, this is a fight that he would like later on in the tournament, to get higher up the card, to get paid more money, to do all these sort of things. I think it's a big ask for him. Luckily, he's made the switches and he's been changed. He's changed training, and now he's training at Great British Top Team under Brad Pickett. So he has a team behind him that have that big fight experience and the high level fighter IQ that can break down these sort of fighters. And I think that's really where he's developed. You've seen him get better and better and better. And like you said, his last fight against Kristofic, I believe, when he got the finish, this is a great example. Like he moved much better. He avoided damage, didn't get into stupid positions. It was a very, very good fight for him. So I think if there's any moment to fight David Cosma, now is probably the best for him. Making the switch, getting comfortable. Cosma coming off a big loss against Kai Brito and now coming into the tournament. He won his last fight, but not that convincingly, to be honest. He got through some tough moments in it. But we all know how this fight's going to go. Like, if you watch fighting and you understand these two guys, we know that David Cosma is going to come out. He's going to close the distance. He's going to try and take David Lahore up. They're going to take Alex Lahore up against the fence. Try and push him up against the fence, try and take him down and try and grind him out. So Lahore has to avoid the fence, has to create distance, and has to pop him with shots. It's basic. And if you watch the Kai Brito fight, that's how he managed to time himself to get the finish. So I would say this fight, first round, is what it's all about. If Lahore can come out in the first round and put it on to Cosma, and he can hurt him and he can do something, then it will be a good night for him. But I would probably guess it's going to go the other way, and he's going to get grinded out by David Cosma, who's an extremely talented long-term champion at OKTAGON and been in there with some of the best fighters in Europe, multiple times over and over again, and has a style that, for me, is like the worst style for Lahore to fight. He's not going to engage in the striking and going to try and get it to the mat. But we'll see. We'll see. This is a great fight. Like you said, he's main event worthy. Could be further up the tip sport game changer, brackets. We could see this in the semis. We could see this even could be a final. But yeah, it's going to be a great fight.
Yeah, and then finally, just the main event, arguably the biggest fight you'll find in Octagon history: Patrick Kinsella versus Carlos Vamola. I mean, if you're watching Octagon, you've heard both these names at some point. You've seen the stories. Obviously, Vamola told he wasn't going to be able to fight again. He came back not too long ago, and he's moving straight into this fight. And Kinsella as well has had a great story. But taking a look at this fight, big main event, sold-out arena, what's the outlook for this fight?
Yeah, so big fight. Big historical fight. These guys have fought before, and Vamola got the win, got the victory over Kinsella. Kinsella was young and was starting out his career. He's the young guy. Vamola's the more experienced, the older guy. It's both kind of, for me, how I look. I've known, again, my first ever training session ever back in MMA was with Carlos Vamola in Essex. So he was like the coach teaching some wrestling and stuff. Forever ago, I went with Jack Mason 20 years ago when we trained together. So Carlos has been in the game forever. People don't know his story. He started as a heavyweight, the Terminator, knocking people out. Went to the UFC, fought heavyweight, fought light heavyweight, fought middleweight. Then he left the UFC, been put with Octagon for a while. He was a middleweight champion, light heavyweight champion, changing between the weight classes, lost to Attila Bey. Now he wants that rematch as well. Like you said, had an injury, was hospitalized, had problems, told he could never fight again. So what does he do? Carlos is told he can never fight again, so he books 3 fights. 3 fights, 2 fights in 6 weeks, and then this fight. And he's already booked another fight at the end of the year, I think. So he doesn't know life without fighting. He's a very different individual. For me, the way I see this fight is like Carlos is the version of Patrick Kinsella. Kinsella has kind of copied Carlos. So Patrick saw Carlos's success, and he has stolen that technique and what he does, and he's improved it. This is how I look at it. The younger guy, he's added more weapons than what Carlos has been doing. Carlos is a tank, comes down, gets you down with double leg, grinds you out, gets on top, ground and pounds you, makes you turn over, gets a side choke or a rear naked choke. That's his route A to victory. He's got more than that, but that's his route A. That's what he does. Kinsella does that as well. But then we saw when he fought Alex Lahore, knocked him out with a head kick or dropped him with a head kick, which you would never see Vamola do. You would never, ever see Vamola try and head kick someone. It just wouldn't happen. So I feel like this is a story where Vamola is Vamola is the star. Vamola is the guy. And Kinsella has kind of cloned him and then added weapons on top. So he's, to me, like the next level of Vamola. Technically, I'm talking like technically the way he fights and all the technical abilities. Because he's younger, because Kinsella's been involved in the sport when the sport's developed quicker. He's been training with higher level developed guys from a younger age. He's managed to add these things to his game. So I think he has more ways to victory than Vamola. But Vamola's way to victory is so certain in his own brain. I spoke to Carlos about this fight. He said, I just do the same. I beat him once, I beat him again. Literally, word for word like that. I was like, okay, mate, well, he's got a bit better. He's like, no, nothing. So he doesn't know any other way. He doesn't know how to lose, basically. So it's almost could be a change of guard situation. That's what everyone believes it is. The king, Carlos Vamola, taking on Patrick Kinsella. Patrick wants this fight. Patrick knows if he beats Vamola, he becomes the king of Czech MMA. So there's so much to it. There's so much to it historically. How the fight's going to go, you have to tune in and watch. That's the only way to find out, because I really don't know. I like both these guys. I've known Patrick for Kinsella for a long, long time. I've obviously known Carlos 20 years. Like, they're both great guys. They've both got their own characters. And I want a great fight. I don't know who's going to win. I'm never going to say who's going to win. But I want I want both of them to show their talents and to show their level. And I know we're in for like when they both walk to the cage, but when Vermola especially walks to the cage, 20,000 people are going to go crazy. So it's going to be an insane environment, an insane atmosphere that's going to end with I'm sure, a great fight. And it tips off this event because this fight card is stacked. So many great fights. We've gone through them all now. To end with this fight is why I think this becomes a real moment. And it's only a week away, so I can't wait for it.
100%. Well, that is everything from myself. And originally, it seems as though you only knew you were going to speak about the 3 fights. Ended up sticking you for all, but I'm very grateful for your time. I know how busy you are, but thank you very much for your time. Obviously, OKTAGON 43 pay-per-view. Make sure you get that. Sure you can find it on the OKTAGON socials as well.
It's OKTAGON.tv/EN. So if you go on OKTAGON and you want to watch it, it's a pay-per-view card. You watch online, put /EN, then you get the English commentary. Myself and Brian Lacey doing the commentary. Otherwise, it's Czech commentary. They have Polish commentary. They have Slovak commentary. They have all these different ones. You make sure you get the pay-per-view and you get it on OKTAGON.tv/EN. Or like you said, keep an eye on the socials. Keep an eye on my social. I'll always post out the link with the English link to it so you can watch.
There you go. Appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.